It's Todd Urey, and it's This Week in Pharmacy. What do you know? Another week flying by. Does anybody else think that 2024 is going just a little too fast? It's almost March already. We're preparing for the Profit Summit Live, Pharmacy Profit Summit Live conference in Dallas, Texas on March 10th. That's put out by Pharmacy 50, 3 times Pharmacy 50 winner, voted by her peers, Dr. Lisa Faust. So proud of what she's done for community pharmacy and helping them to thrive and come up with ways of staying alive and staying in business, and how crucial that is for your communities. Hey, pharmacists out there and technicians out there, we can tell you how frustrating of a week I'm sure that you're having based on so many things that are going on. I'm not going to putz around. We're going to jump right into this. We're going to talk about some interesting news that just came out today based on the closures. And these closures continue to happen across the nation. And like I said, people like Lisa Faust is out there teaching community pharmacies to stay in business. But this news comes out of the Seattle Times. Washington state pharmacies close in record numbers as Bartell Drugs, Rite Aid, all are closing. And this is not good for public health. It says a record number of Washington state pharmacies shut down last year, driven by the string of Bartell and drugs and Rite Aid closures in Seattle area. About 60 pharmacies closed in 2023, which is twice as many closures as recorded the previous year, according to the Seattle Times analysis of the Department of Health and data on active closed pharmacies. Once again, not good for our communities. We know the reasons being how things are being paid for. That's why PBM reform is so important. If you're listening to the show today, please make it your goal this coming week to write a letter, not a form letter, because I've talked to some politicians and they say that emails and form letters aren't as good. I would handwrite a letter and send it to them. I know that's a lot of work in you, but just tell them in short sentence, my name is blank. I am a pharmacist or I am a technician, and I'd like to support PBM reform on our state. It's causing us to have issues, and you could even give references. These politicians that are out there, the majority of those politicians don't understand PBM reform. They don't understand how PBMs work. But as you know, just from the national news, this just came out February 23rd, today at 6 a.m. with the closings. All right, let's talk about other things happening. Just hours ago, we found out about a cyber attack on health tech firms, crippling the United States military pharmacies worldwide. However, if you keep going through the news, you'll see on the Wall Street Journal, hospitals and pharmacies reeling after Change Healthcare got attacked, a cyber attack. And then over at Fox Business News, it says pharmacies nationwide face delays as healthcare tech companies report cyber attacks. Goodness gracious. And we all experienced this week cyber attack. And obviously, that was a big deal. My mobile phone was down, as a lot of people's mobile phones were down. This is kind of a scary trend, if you ask me. I mean, goodness gracious, cyber attacks rising, and what that means for healthcare, what that means for daily living, what that means for banking, electricity grids. I don't know if I need to give a shout out to the boomers out there and the Generation Xers out there like me, who lived without all of this technology for so long. But our society has become so integrated and so necessary. We all hate the fax machine. We'd like to see it go away, but maybe it's a good backup for right now in order to get claims processed and get our patients cared for. But this is something that is of major concern. And This Week in Pharmacy, we wanted to cover it before we get into today's tech-oriented delivery. As you saw in the artwork of this episode, this is about technology. This is about robots in health system pharmacy. This is also about digital health. So with that in mind, I just want to touch on Diligent Robots, Andrea Thomas, Andrea Thomaz. She's the CEO and co-founder of Diligent Robots. We're going to be talking to her about Moxi, which is a robot that goes throughout different sectors of hospitals to deliver medications, but also used for security. And before we get into that, I just also want to give a shout out to all of the pharmacists and all of the technicians getting ready for the APHA, the American Pharmacists Association 2024. If you're going to the conference, please reach out to Pharmacy Podcast. We will be inside the APHA's booth. We'll be running their podcast, which is called Locked on Pharmacy. If you have something to say, if you have something to talk about, if you want to make a point, if it's political, if it's something about a procedure, if it's medication management, medication safety, technology, anything, I don't care. Please reach out to us to get you scheduled. Our interviews are filling up fast at the APHA, but like I said, we want to involve you, and we want to hear from more of you that are out there. All right, without further delay, I want to get into today's amazing guest. I want to talk about technology in healthcare, technology in our hospital systems. Please listen to these interviews and then give us some feedback, how you think how you think robotics are going to impact your positions and your jobs and your effectiveness in caring for patients. We care about you, and I'll be back in just a moment after this interview. Hey, and on This Week in Pharmacy, a special technology episode, the integration of robots into different industries is nothing new. I mean, as far back as the 1960s, many manufacturing environments saw the first deployment of robotic arms and cars being put together by massive amount of technology in order to minimize these repetitive tasks, while simultaneously freeing up human workforce to focus on something else. Healthcare is being infused by robotics and technology. And the Pharmacy Podcast Network has always been curious as to how robotics, artificial intelligence will impact the future of healthcare, and more importantly, pharmacy care, and where hospital systems are using robotics. This is important. I have a special guest from Diligent Robotics, Andrea Thomaz is here with us. Andrea, I'm so excited to have you here on This Week in Pharmacy.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Right out of the gate, I want you to tell us about Diligent Robots and yourself. And I have a bunch of questions. And if you're viewing us on YouTube, you'll be able to see some of the actual examples of Moxi. But if you don't have access, if you're not watching us, if you're driving, you shouldn't be watching anything. Keep your hands on your steering wheel. But go to diligentrobots.com. It will be in the show notes. But once again, diligentrobots.com. All right. So tell us about your background and how you got into robotics, because what a fascinating part of our healthcare technology.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. So, yeah, I'm Andrea Thomaz, co-founder of Diligent Robotics. We founded the company in 2018. Before that, I was a professor of robotics at UT Austin, and really have co-founded the company with one of my PhD students. And our passion has always been, putting robots right next to people and figuring out ways that they can work together and team together. So we like to say that we build robot teammates. And one of the things that we were excited about when we launched Diligent was finding a space and a team structure that really needed robots to augment their work. And when we started to investigate and learn more about the interworkings of hospitals, it became very apparent that there are way too many people in hospitals running around and physically moving things from one place to another, and that's really where the idea of Moxi robots came to be. So this is our robot Moxi. Moxi can travel autonomously throughout a hospital and has locked storage containers that you have to use your staff badge to unlock the drawers there, and we can transport things from one place to another. So one of the biggest things that Moxi is asked to transport across all of our hospitals that we're deployed in is medications from pharmacy, and that's either from pharmacy directly to nursing units, or sometimes we'll do transports from a main pharmacy to satellite pharmacies. And we're just really excited about the work that we're able to take on with robots, because that means that pharmacists and pharmacy techs are staying in the pharmacy and doing their actual licensed work.
So I always think of the pharmacy embedded in our hospital systems as a central point for nurses, physicians, specialists, interns, candy stripers to engage and be part of delivery, bedside follow-up, and how pharmacists are becoming less task-based and much more patient treatment based, as well as bedside based, which is very exciting to follow up from what the physician kind of put into place. And then what happens afterwards is so important when the patient goes home. But tell me about that realization of robotics. When did you realize that that robotics would be helpful to pharmacists specifically?
Yeah, so we did. So I said we launched the company in 2018, and we didn't want to come into a hospital environment as roboticists and say, well, we know exactly how you should implement robots. Like, here's what robots do in manufacturing or in factories, and so we're just going to turn the hospital into a factory. So we knew that was not the right way. And the brand of robotics that I studied for a number of years and taught is called human robot interaction. So it's really about taking a look at a current team of people and then really understanding, if we add automation, we add robots to this team of people, like how can we redesign that workforce or redesign that workflow and kind of optimize for the human robot team. So to take that perspective, in the first year and a half that we launched the company, we built a single robot. We had one prototype, and looked a lot like the robot that you see out there, the Moxi that you see today, but on the insides was completely different. And we took that robot to 4 different hospitals across Texas, and we found amazing kind of innovative nursing partners, mostly, who let us deploy our robot and a team of people, researchers, for like 6 weeks, and we would just embed ourselves with that nursing team. It was usually just a single department in a medical surgical unit, so like a med surg unit in a hospital. We're embedded, and we're just asking those nursing teams, like, what do you need? Like, what would be helpful? Like, what kind of materials management? And very, very, like, soon after we started, almost every one of those leaders asked us about getting medications. But then as soon as we started to talk to pharmacy directors, like, well, what would it mean for this robot to carry medications? Well, it would have to be locked for sure. And we would need to have some compliance around who's loading and unloading the robot. And so, all of those early discoveries are really what led us to put some of the product features in place that now allow Moxi to be integrated into pharmacy and nursing workflows. But it was really those early days of just asking, like, what do you need? Like, what do you really need to have transported around? And the question we usually start with is like, what takes your pharmacy techs away from the pharmacy? Like, when are they having to like walk across the building, and why? And so we dig into that workflow and really ask the questions of like, what would it take to automate it?
So as someone who is, to use your word, diligent about delivering good information month after month, day after day. We put out 6 podcasts per week. I'm always going back to our sponsors and our clients to say, what's the most important thing to you to amplify your messaging and to push the value of what we do forward? Diligent Robots has the exact same challenge. You have to prove to the people that are in charge of budgets that this is worth an investment based on the size of the hospital, based on the corridors. Some of our hospitals are legacy built back in the 50s and 60s, and they're still using these organizations, but I've seen them lay down tracks. I've seen them lay down like QR codes for identification of different areas. So how do you convince, or how do you propose to a pharmacy inside and or a hospital system overall that this is a good investment?
Yeah, great question. Well, so there's a couple parts of what you're talking about there that I think are really interesting. So first is the ease of implementation. So you're talking about some of the older ways that robots were installed into kind of the back hallways of hospitals was through tracks and very physical things that you had to install in the environment. Um, Modern day robots don't need that. And so we're excited to be bringing this kind of next generation of robotics and AI into the hospital space. So you don't have to lay down anything in the physical environment to allow the robot to navigate. There's LiDAR sensors on the robot, and in the first couple of days of after shipment, you would see some of our implementation team driving the robots around with PlayStation controllers, and basically you demonstrate to the robots everywhere that they're going to need to work. And so we call this learning from demonstration. And after being demonstrated all of the places in the hospital that the robot might need to go, that builds up a map, and now you can send the robot from point A to point B anywhere. And so then you just have to drop down like physical pins like you would on a Google map where you're telling a friend how to get from one point to another. That's exactly how Moxi's maps work. And so the clinical teams can just say, well, I want to be able to go from pharmacy, and when Moxi comes to pharmacy, this would be a great place to stop. And then you can talk about all the other places that Moxi needs to go. So typically when a hospital system is thinking about automation, it is, they're coming to us with a desire to optimize their workforce and augment their workforce, and think about the term that gets used a lot, and when we first were starting the company, the term that we were hearing a lot was called getting people to perform at the top of their license. So you have pharmacists, you have pharmacy techs, you have a lot of people who've gone through a lot of education and training and certification to work in that pharmacy. And so the hospital leadership is often looking at, well, we're short staffed,
Yep.
but and also the staff that we do have, we're not using optimally. And they're coming to us to say, how can we make sure that the people that we have on staff are working at the top of their license? And delivering medications with your feet is not working at the top of your license. So we really help to take that little piece of the transport task off of the plate. In terms of the value that we're creating, we can really show that in the first week, month of utilization, because everything that the robot does is tracked, and we can kind of demonstrate that, look, this would have been 4 million steps that your teams would have taken in order to get all these deliveries done.
That is really cool. I think of when I go from one point to a next, especially when I'm traveling, immediately I turn on the GPS. I'm able to see exactly the turns and everything that what I need to do. It also gives me how long it's going to take me to get there. Sometimes I use that as a little side challenge to see if I can get there faster. But in the case of Moxi, is one department to the next, especially if coming from the pharmacy, we're delivering to a nursing station. Is there any metrics, live metrics at the time where a nurse could look at her iPad or her phone and see where Moxi is, how far away they are from delivering the meds?
So we don't have like a map of the hospital. You don't see the little Moxi robots like your Uber cars or something yet. We'd love to get there, but it is a common request. I think people would love to see that. But it's more like you see on there's a kiosk that we can put at every nursing station, or every place that's going to be receiving Moxi deliveries, and that's where you can see the current activity. You can see And so on your task, it would show, Moxi is traveling to the pharmacy, Moxi is traveling to your unit. So you would see a little bit more like some of the food delivery apps do, where you can see like, oh, there, your driver is heading to pick up your food at the restaurant. Okay, now your driver is heading to you.
Right.
So that's the level of detail that we have on the tabs.
Let's talk about strategic initiatives. What are what are some of those initiatives that you are getting feedback from pharmacy departments and getting an idea of how best to implement and or make changes to what Moxie does for them?
Yeah, we've really learned a lot about some of the ways that pharmacy directors are in hospitals are trying to, I think, back to what you're saying, it's no longer just, fulfilling medications, but really trying to be, I think, pharmacy is really part of that care team that's focused on the patient, the quality of patient care, and what can we do to increase the quality of that patient care. So there's two kind of bigger initiatives that we've seen. A number of our different hospital partners are working on the same thing around. One is discharge medications. So everybody's been there. If you're in the hospital or if you're with a loved one in a hospital and you've got your discharge orders from today's gonna be the day that we're going to get discharged. And, there's like a number of things that have to happen. And one of the biggest things that has to happen is if you're getting medication from the pharmacy that you're taking home, waiting for those discharge medications to get delivered to you and getting the education that you need is like one of the biggest kind of sign off things for being able to be discharged. And um, that is a lot of hospitals are implementing with their pharmacies what's commonly called a meds to beds program. So, where you're really trying to focus on that, hey, as soon as a discharge medication is ordered, let's really focus on like decreasing that time that we get that medication to the bedside so that we can make sure to get people discharged in a timely manner. What we've learned is that there's been, even when there's a strategic initiative to say like, yes, we want to implement a meds to beds program, when the pharmacy department and the nursing departments kind of sit down and actually think about the operational logistics of that, it's just a lot of manpower to have people running around and delivering medications in a really timely manner for every single discharge. And so that's where you've seen hospitals kind of stand up and think about implementing a meds to beds program and decide like, yeah, we would have to hire this many runners to just have those medications run around during our heavy discharge hours. And we're able to come in and say like, well, great, let's, how many discharge medications do you have that you think you're going to be going across the hospital during this busy discharge time? Let's build you a fleet of Moxi robots, and that's all they're doing. They're coming back to pharmacy and waiting for the next discharge medication. So that's been a really fun one because I think it's a strategic initiative that a lot of hospitals have had in mind for a long time and just haven't had the workforce and the manpower to make it happen.
That leads me to when I'm listening and I'm thinking from the perspective of our pharmacy technicians and pharmacists, what's the feedback that you're getting from these hospital system pharmacists about the effectiveness of Moxie's impact on their daily work?
Yeah, we are continually hearing from pharmacy leaders and pharmacists, nursing leaders and nurses that they're just thankful and able to get back to their real job. So I think, if you're a pharmacy tech, what you're supposed to be doing is, being in the pharmacy, fulfilling medication, making prescription fulfillments, and the more time that you can spend on that is the better. Pharmacy directors are, very excited to be able to really quantify the hours that, would have been taken away from their teams needing to run around the building, that they're no longer having to do that and they're able to focus on their work. Longer term, we're looking to work with some of our hospitals that have had pharmacy automation with Moxi live for once we get to like a year and 2 years, you really thinking through some of the clinical metrics that we would be able to point to around are we really decreasing our time to fill, and things that are like metrics that are really driving the performance of the pharmacy, because you've got your people focused on what you need them to focus on.
So back to an example that you were talking about during implementation, one of your staff members guiding the Moxi unit, the robot, through the hospital with a, kind of like you were saying, like a video game controller of sorts. That's part of the process. So how long does it actually take to install and get Moxi
Yeah,
hospital?
to implement. So there's a couple of things that happen during implementation, and there's like technical things that we have to, build a map of the environment, name the different locations, set up the kind of kiosks so that people know how to call Moxi from one point to another. The technical implementation just it can take as little as 3 weeks. Then in parallel, there's the change management piece. And so we're taking and re-envisioning a workflow that was already happening in the hospital. And we have to work with the staff on both the pharmacy side and the nursing side typically to redefine that workflow. Okay, nurses used to come down to pharmacy and get this, or pharmacy techs used to go to nursing units and get that. And so we work with both sides to optimize that and say, okay, now Moxi is going to do this and nurses are going to do that, and the pharmacy is going to do this. And so that process is our workflow redesign and then workflow rollout. And that one can be we tend to take about a couple weeks of workflow design and a couple weeks of workflow training. So all in all, it's about a 4 to 5 week process to design workflows, get robots on site, get them trained up, and get the staff trained up, and then we can have a go live in about 40 days.
Very cool. When I think of innovation, technology, someone like yourself is always thinking of how to improve things as well as what's the next phase of this technology. And we were talking about what may come, what features you've been asked about, but what are some of the next features rolling out that you're excited about?
Yeah. So let's see. I'll mention a couple that are really going to have a lot of impact on pharmacy in particular. We have the ability to do restricted access. So there's different levels of access that we can provide to the drawers, and this is whether just the sensitivity of medications that could be put into the drawers of Moxi is higher if you're able to have that kind of restricted access. So that's a recent feature that's come out, that there's some medications that could be, anyone with a staff badge should be able to open those drawers on the nursing unit and bring that to the nurse. But there's other medications that you would want only the nursing team is licensed to be able to open the drawer and take that medication out. And so we've got that restricted deliveries as a feature that's rolled out, where we've got 2 factors of authentication, where you need to have both a nursing badge and then also be in the location of that nursing unit. So it's a location based and a badge based. We've got 2 factors of authentication. But this year we're going to be adding multi-factor authentication with PIN codes and eventually biometrics. So we're excited to be doing that multi-factor authentication to be able to, carry even more and more sensitive things. The second feature that I'll mention that we're excited about this year was we're trialing. We have 2 different hospitals that are working with us to do the first examples of integrations with the electronic health record. So we're doing both an Epic and a Cerner integration. And what's exciting about that is that then you take out the need for a pharmacist to actually call Moxi to come and take something. So we can have more of an understanding and kind of be following along with how the medication, the medication order comes in. We can see when it's been filled and is ready for someone to come and transport it. And that can trigger a robot to just automatically come to the pharmacy and be waiting for that. So So we're really excited about the optimization that that's going to give to our teams.
Wow, that proactive ability tied into the click-throughs and the drop downs that are inside the EHR systems, that would be amazing. I know just from working with pharmacists in Allegheny Health Network and here in Pittsburgh, they were talking about triggers and what happens with a trigger
Yep,
is all really workflow based, but now you're connecting robotics into these triggers. So that is really exciting.
exactly. Yeah. We've done some early, we did some really early prototypes of this where we sort of kind of manually figured out those triggers and had somebody send like an email to the whenever it was needed. And in the early feedback of what it's like to have a robot kind of automatically be triggered from the EHR, people would use the word magic. It's like, oh my gosh, the robot just magically showed up when I need it to. So, so it's actually one of our, that happened about 2, 3 years ago that we started to hear about this magic. And it's actually made its way into one of our core values at Diligent Robots is that we make real magic here at Diligent Robotics.
Moxi the magician just shows up and does the intuitive robot. That's great. Um, I appreciate you coming on This Week in Pharmacy, sharing technology innovation. We're always looking for how independent studies are forwarding future technologies. If there's ever any white papers or blogs that you can share with our listeners, we push a lot of this content through social media as well as our blog ourselves. I'd like to do a special follow up with you later in the year to see where you're going to be at. And December is one of the largest conferences in hospital system pharmacy called the ASHP, the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. I believe that's called the mid-year. Will you be at that event?
We are making arrangements to have a presence there. Absolutely.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, this has been a treat for us and our listeners, I'm sure. Once again, check out diligentrobots.com. That's diligentrobots.com and look out for Moxi. And then you have videos on YouTube as well, which if you just search Diligent Robots or Diligent Robots Moxi, you'll absolutely find those videos. Andrea Thomaz, this has been wonderful to talk with you. And like I said, we got to have you back on This Week in Pharmacy.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's great.
Hey, that was fun. Learning about how robots will actually continue to advance. I mean, I have an imagination of where this could all go, but to make it that effective and to work with the hospital systems, and that's exciting. So we have an entire technology dedication to you today in today's episode. We're going to be listening to an interview about digital health and how that is tied into the rest of our healthcare ecosystem driven by pharmacists. But before that, I want you guys to listen to Darshan Kulkarni, who does an amazing podcast called Darshan Talks. He's been part of our network for years. I want to say more than 6, 7 years. He is now a correspondent for This Week in Pharmacy, so he'll always participate in giving his insights. Let's hear from Darshan now.
To this week's episode of Darshan Talks on This Week in Pharmacy. This week, we'll be zoning in on a critical battlefront in the pharmacy world, fighting back against pharmacy benefit managers. In recent times, we've seen notable chains like Rite Aid and CVS closing stores, a move that signals the intense pressure the industry is under. Independent pharmacists, the heart and soul of the community pharmacy model, are feeling the squeeze even more acutely. They're battling not just with the operational challenges of running a pharmacy, but with navigating the complex web of PBM policies and reimbursements. It's an uphill battle. So let's start with the beginning. Who are PBMs? So PBMs play a significant role in the pharmaceutical and pharmacy industries, and they act as an intermediary between insurers and other members of the healthcare system. They have substantial influence on which drugs are covered by insurance plans and at what cost. However, their practices have come under recent scrutiny, with many of them being accused of contributing to the challenges independent pharmacies face. This includes burnout and financial pressures. The FTC is already looking into this issue. Having said that, there are many problems and many criticisms levied against these PBMs. One of them is the lack of transparency. Pharmacists frequently find themselves at a disadvantage, unable to determine how reimbursement rates are being calculated or whether certain medications are preferred over others. This opacity can lead to situations where pharmacies are reimbursed below the cost of acquiring and dispensing medications. This threatens viability and the ability to serve their communities. Then there's the use of direct and indirect remuneration. These DIR fees have been added, and they've sort of added this additional layer of complexity and financial burden on pharmacies. These fees, assessed by PBMs long after the point of sale, can make it incredibly challenging for pharmacies to predict the revenue streams and manage their finances effectively. So what can pharmacists do to fight back and navigate these turbulent waters? First of all, knowledge is power. Understand the contracts you have with PBMs. Know what you're agreeing to. What do the reimbursement rates allow for? How are disputes handled? And it's not just about signing on the dotted line. It's not just about being part of their network. It's about negotiating terms that are fair and sustainable for your pharmacy. I've worked with clients who signed at that bottom line. They worked with the PBMs only to find out that when they actually needed the help the most, the PBMs were not there to help. Next, advocacy and legislation. There's a growing movement amongst pharmacists to push for more transparent and fair practices from PBMs. Joining these professional organizations lobbying for state, local, and federal regulations can make a huge difference. Some states have already introduced laws to regulate PBM practices, aiming to ensure more fairness in the system. So what's another strategy? Diversification. So don't put all your eggs in the PBM basket. Look for other ways to diversify your revenue streams. This can mean additional offerings like immunizations, health screenings, wellness programs. Create value that PBMs cannot undermine and that patients can't get from giant chains or online giants. So collaboration is also key. Independent pharmacies often feel like they're on an island, but there's strength in numbers. Forming or joining networks and cooperatives can enhance your bargaining power with PBMs and suppliers. It's about creating a united front to negotiate better deals and share resources. Now, let's not forget about technology. Utilize the latest in pharmacy management software. This will streamline your operations, but also, and more importantly, provide the data to better negotiate with PBMs. You need to have data on drug pricing, patient adherence, pharmacy performance, all of which will help you negotiate better. Then there's customer service. In the end, I've worked in a pharmacy, you've worked in a pharmacy. The heart of pharmacy is patient care. Excelling in personalized service, building relationships with your patients, and providing care that goes beyond just filling a prescription sets you apart. When patients choose your pharmacy because of the quality of care, it sends a message to PBMs and insurers about your value. So again, it's clear that understanding the legal and regulatory framework governing PBMs is crucial. Discovering and using alternatives comes with a slew of regulatory and compliance challenges. And here's where having advocacy and legal knowledge can come into play. Reach out to me, Darshan Kulkarni, at the Kulkarni Law Firm. I have over 20 years of experience as a pharmacist, over 20 years of experience in food and drug law, so I'm uniquely positioned to help pharmacists and pharmacy owners. So I can help provide strategic advice and legal representation when needed to challenge unfair PBM practices. I can help you negotiate better terms and ensure compliance with the ever-changing regulatory landscape. In conclusion, when the challenges posed by PBMs are significant, they aren't insurmountable, but having the right knowledge, strategies, and legal support, pharmacists can be helped in protecting their interests, and you can continue to serve the vital role of delivering healthcare in your community. Thank you for tuning into Darshan Talks. Remember, the face of challenges, knowledge is power, and legal expertise is your shield. Please reach out to me, Darshan Kulkarni, at 302-252-6959, or you can reach me via email at darshan@kulkarnilawfirm.com. I'm hoping to hear from you. I'm hoping to be able to help you.
This episode is sponsored by Independent Pharmacy Cooperative, widely known as IPC. Established in 1983, IPC is the nation's largest group purchasing organization owned by independent pharmacy. With a mission of maximizing the success of community pharmacists, IPC works to provide members with access to effective programs and services designed to enhance profitability for independent pharmacy. Read more about our mission by checking out our website at ipcrx.com. That's ipcrx.com.
Hey, and on This Week in Pharmacy, we are talking digital health. I love technology. It's where I started in pharmacy. I think that technology in the hands of our pharmacist is a game changer. I've seen this over the years from pharmacy management systems that evolved from character-based systems to SQL. And what does that mean? Well, access to information. Back in the day, I don't have to tell you this, pharmacists that have been around the block as long as I have and more. Remember when the only thing you could do with a pharmacy management system was access it, before that, people were doing prescriptions on typewriters. And then, of course, word processors, and then the closed system where you had the character-based system that really couldn't share information. Fast forward to today, technology is fascinating. And now the birth of artificial intelligence to help accelerate decision processing and treatment plans, how we're going to have texting happening from AI bots in the background, are going to be asking questions of our patients, collecting information, giving it back to the physician and the EHR, making some recommendations on next steps. Pharmacists are deep in this. The Pharmacy Podcast Network has invested heavily into finding the champions. I do want to give a shout out to Simi Byrne. Dr. Simi Byrne is the new host of Digital Therapeutics. And we're so excited that she is going to lead the way for us on our network and really going out and finding the gem stories, going out and finding the stories of how digital therapeutics, how AI, how technology is impacting patient care. The person that I'm about to introduce you to, some of you have never heard of this champion, healthcare champion through publishing, through content development. There's others that absolutely have heard of Tjaša Zajc. She is a champion for patient health through her documentation, through her coverage. I am pleased. I am honored to finally have her on This Week in Pharmacy after a very long wait. Tjaša Zayc, welcome to This Week in Pharmacy.
Thanks for having me, Todd, and thank you for the kind words.
I'm just so impressed with what you've built. Faces of Digital Health has been a go-to for me in a publication that gives me podcasts, which I consume so much information through podcasts, but Faces of Digital Health and how much of a wide stance that you've taken, the champions that you brought to your program right out of the gate. There's my digital health godfather on your website. I met John Nosta, which was my intro into digital health, I want to say almost 7 or 8 years ago, and really defining what that meant. So you have a lot of amazing people that come on your show. I want you to talk to our listeners, our pharmacists out there. Tell me about yourself and how you got into this.
So I'm a journalist by background, and I have a potentially interesting story about podcasting that I usually don't share. But the reason that I actually started podcasting is because in 2016, my partner and we hiked the Continental Divide Trail in the US. So that's the trail that goes from the Mexico border to the Canadian border. It takes half a year to just, walk through it. And obviously, while you do all that walking in the wilderness, you have to do something. And the best thing to do is to listen to podcasts. So I listened to a lot of different podcasts in 2016. And my job at that time was, apart from journalist, to also work as a audience developer for the company that I worked at the time. So after I came back from the trail, I had quite a few ideas about how we could do podcasts. and we did one for the Finance Daily newspaper, and I started another one, international one, on healthcare digitalization. It was called Medicine Today on Digital Health at the time, and then I renamed it to Faces of Digital Health in 2017, and I tried to cover how different healthcare systems around the world adopt technology. So I talk to policymakers, I look at the accessibility of healthcare, the structure of healthcare systems, healthcare challenges, and obviously the impact of technology. And in 2021, this is something that might be more interesting for the audience, is I did a documentary about how can we prevent medication errors, and I spoke with 15 patients, nurses, pharmacists, and clinicians and entrepreneurs around why medication errors happen, what is the complexity of the hospital environment that contributes to the errors, what are the approaches that we can take to prevent these errors and patient harm. So that's still available on YouTube, and we also had like a dedicated panel discussion after that documentary at the premiere, with additional 5 experts from, again, different countries. So yeah, that was 15 speakers from 10 different countries to figure out that basically medication safety is a global challenge that we should raise awareness about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've worked with Omnicell before. They were on our network for about 2 or 3 years, always focused on safety in hospital systems. That series was specific to the hospital setting, or did it fall outside of the hospital setting and start to touch ambulatory and, of course, follow-up care through community pharmacy?
So it was limited to hospitals, just because yeah, the whole space and the complexity of medication management is so vast. Um, a lot of challenges and a lot of errors happen in the hospitals, like in many, I mean, that's not the case in the US, but like in many countries, many things are still on paper. When you have things on paper, you have eligibility issues, you've got 10 times overdoses, you've got mixed drugs, you have mixed doses, missed doses, because patient charts can't be found, and we could go on and on and on. Wrong patient gets the wrong drug or the wrong dose, or the medication is given through the wrong route. So I really wanted to explain, uh, the complexity around that, and also the technologies that are trying to support that. And we've got clinical decision support systems, we've got ward cabinets, and pharmacy robots that can all be integrated together to enable closed loop prescribing, also through barcoding, where you actually check that you have the right patient by checking the patient's barcode and then checking the barcode on the medication to make sure that you don't give the wrong drug to the wrong patients. The point of that movie wasn't really in trying to figure out whose fault is it, but to really just create the clarity around the complexity of the issue, because I hope that everyone understands that the hospital environment is really complex. It's very stressful.
Yep.
Everybody's doing their best, and mistakes happen. They will keep happening, but we can do a lot to mitigate the risks and to reduce patient harm if we use technology.
I agree. I agree. So talk to me about Faces of Digital Health. I'm impressed with your content. It's very diverse. You have blogs that you're putting out, that you're doing really deep writings in, and you get very specific into some of the subjects. You're also doing some collaborations with organizations. I follow you when you go to events like HLTH Health, where actually you'll be going in Europe, HLTH Health Europe, coming up after you hit HIMSS Europe, which is exciting. So talk to me about content. What drives you to cover specific issues in healthcare and the tie back to technology?
So there's basically two things. One is that I try to be on top of the latest technology and to explain how it works, what are the challenges. So, for example, last year I did quite a few episodes on generative AI. You can also check the link that I sent you in the chat that goes to the newsletter, which is around 1.5 year old. And the blog is just basically a list of all the episodes with a bit of information about each episode and speaker, whereas the newsletter only comes out roughly once a month and includes like in-depth articles about a specific topic. So you can get literally a crash course on generative AI to give
Mm.
you a better understanding of what it is, how it works, what are the current challenges. Um, and so covering the latest technology is one thing. I think the technological advancements are happening so fast that it's really really hard to understand, how things work. And if you don't understand how things work, it's easy to get confused around the potential of this. So my mission is to bring clarity, to bring understanding, to basically teach people about how things work. That's one thing. And then the second thing is focus on the healthcare systems. I'm a chronic patient. So when I started diving into healthcare and when I started podcasting, my kind of curiosity stemmed from the fact that I thought, well, if I ever wanted to travel and with my chronic issues, what would that mean for me? How good are the healthcare systems in the different countries that I would visit? What would that mean in terms of cost, in terms of health insurance? And that kind of encouraged me to research healthcare systems. So I like to do different series around that. I did a series about healthcare innovation in Africa. Last year, I did a series about the APEC region. This year, I really want to cover the BRICS countries and give a little bit more focus on India, which I know has a lot of things going on. I just haven't had the time to research that. I'm also currently planning an episode on digital therapeutics, especially in Europe, because after the German overview or framework that they designed for the approval and management of digital therapeutics, France is the next one. But actually, Belgium also has had a framework since I think 2019. So I think these are the three countries in Europe that are the strongest. I know that Spain is also planning something, so it's going to be good to know where we are with that. Unfortunately, and this is a general challenge in Europe, and it's also visible here, the rules or regulations are very national, which means that startups or companies are faced with the challenge of kind of localizing even their proof. So, if you did your research on German patients, you then somehow need to prove that this is the same for French patients or for Belgian patients and things like that. So, yeah, make sure to just follow the show to see when that is going to come out.
Absolutely. Where is home for you? I know you travel a lot, but where's home?
I'm based in Ljubljana, Slovenia, a small country with 2 million people, which is a good thing from the digital health perspective because we have a really, really good national infrastructure. So all the healthcare providers are connected to the national backbone. We've got the patient portal where you as a patient can see your electronic prescriptions. So, for example, I can see how many times I can still go to the pharmacy to pick up my meds before I need a repeat prescription from my doctor. I can see my referral letters. I can see which healthcare providers are providing a specific service if I need to see a specialist. You've got discharge letters, lab results, and a really nice timeline that shows you when your next medical appointments are coming up. And in the next upgrade of the portal, the plan is to also enable patient doctor communication. And what else? Yeah, I think that's kind of the main one that I can think of right now. But it's a great thing because like larger countries tend to not have that, and I'm talking about France and Germany, which are in the early stages of establishing that. But yeah, I recently did a bit of a survey and was researching which countries in Europe already have these patient portals, and many of them do. I know that Poland does, Croatia, Greece. So quite a lot of good examples of good practice in terms of how patients can access data, even if they go to different healthcare providers.
Let's talk about digital therapeutics specifically for just a second. And the reason is like I said in the opening, we're going to be dedicating some time and resources through Dr. Simi Byrne to really lead our digital therapeutic talks. We call it digital therapeutic talks. So you are one of 5 people. I pick United States-based providers, and then I pick our global providers. And you are one of those 5 that I want Dr. Byrne to definitely tap into. So listeners, you will be hearing from Tjaša at another podcast on the network in the future when we get you scheduled. But let's do a compare and contrast. Why is it so hard right now that the United States fascination, I should say, with digital therapeutics really heated up about 3 years ago. And now it's cooling down because of the reimbursement, because of being able to get these technologies paid. And it's as if the organizations that are making the determinations of value and the evidence-based driven data that comes through it and the collection of data, they're almost making it that they're starting at a lower level of understanding that we've already prefaced, we've already packed full of knowledge, and now they're saying, oh, we have to make sure that they're FDA cleared, which is understandable, in order to get them paid for. But we've really slowed down in the progression. I know it's going to happen. It's just a stall. So everybody, I think of our friends at Click Therapeutics, who are doing some amazing technology development around COPD and addiction and mental health monitoring through digital therapeutics. What is the contrast between the United States and, you could really say, the rest of the world in the adoption of digital therapeutics from your understanding?
I would say that actually there isn't that much difference. So basically, Germany was lucky that they had a really, really stubborn and fearless healthcare minister that said, even if everybody is against it, we're going to set a framework for digital therapeutics, and he pulled that off. So that's how the framework got set up in Germany. It basically enables companies to go through a regulatory process, get registered, and get into the national database of digital therapeutics. The problem with digital therapeutics that's global is that in terms of regulation, we pretty much have the same expectations in terms of proof, or very similar expectations in terms of proof than we have around medications, which means that clinical trials, hard proof, then this whole regulatory process that you need to go through. All this is really, really time consuming and really expensive, and pharma companies can afford to go through this process, but it's much, much more difficult for healthcare startups. And what's even more difficult for them is to then invest large amounts of effort and money into advertising of those solutions. So on the one hand, you have a solution that gets approved, that's out there, but you still have the trust gap between the solution, the patients, and the doctors, because doctors would need to be educated around all these solutions that are out there, so they could make informed decisions if patients ask them about these apps. Then usually they don't really have time to do that, and you don't have digital health sales rep that would run around clinicians to make sure that they understand exactly what the value proposition of a specific DTX is. And then the second thing that I heard doctors complaining about is that a lot of digital therapeutics are just an add-on to the existing therapy. So they don't really replace the pharmacological therapy that one might also take. And that is a problem for insurance companies that then do not want to put a high price tag on these solutions. So the challenge that happened for many companies in Germany was that they set their price, but that price was reevaluated after a year, and the insurance companies really decreased the price they were willing to pay for those solutions, which was just a death sentence to some of the companies. Now, France is trying to mitigate that through predefined kind of classes that you might fall into as a DTX, so you can have at least an idea of what you can expect in terms of reimbursement. So we will still see how this whole story unfolds. It's going to be around a year, I think, slowly, since France went on this journey. And I will definitely do some research on how they're doing, because one thing that they also did is basically do a national research on digital literacy to also realize what healthcare differences are in different regions. And they realized that they really need to invest in uh, workforce upskilling in digital transformation. So these are all really, really crucial steps when we're talking about digital transformation and the use of new technologies. And one thing that I also think is very interesting to mention in this case is the accessibility of these solutions that is very limited to larger markets because of business reasons. So, for example, in the US, even if you don't have reimbursement codes, but you have solutions that have proven efficacy, you can get them. Me, as someone coming from a country with 2 million people and a weird language, like companies just won't even bother trying to get on this market. So as a patient advocate, that's one of the bigger pains that I have. And one thing that was also recently mentioned to me is that a lot of countries that don't have, DTX frameworks just yet, when you think about it from the policymaker or political point of view, as there's so many problems in healthcare. There's strikes all over the place. DTX is probably on 10th place on your to-do list. So you don't even get to that point because there's so many other pressing issues that you want to cover.
It's very true. I think of an article that I read on Osborne Clark, osborneclark.com, for listeners that aren't following along on our visuals and our YouTube show, This Week in Pharmacy. And they're classified, as you were saying, Tjaša, the two different types of DTX: the standalone, which is, hey, this is the therapy, this is part of the rollout. We're going to collect the data and be able to make determinations of efficacy as well as evidence-based follow-up. And then our plugin, that is, hey, this is accompanying some type of medication. I think my imagination starts going crazy. There's a company called eTechRx that I know very well. I actually used to work with Harry Travis when he was the CEO of eTechRx, and it is a ingestible capsule that you fill with a medication, and then there's nodes inside the capsule that will tell you the disintegration, the digestion, how fast it's there, how fast it's got to your stomach and where it needs to go. And the future of that technology could become huge. That's obviously a great example of a plugin that accompanies some kind of medication. What of the two do you think is going to become universal, where we can say, hey, for this, have you ever seen a disease state, for example, Tjaša, that you're like, this is the one, like COPD or obviously in the respiratory world, but maybe it's mental health, maybe it's addiction. Have you ever seen any DTX make a closer reach to where we need to be in order to be full scale use?
The challenge that I see, in all these approaches is that if you undergo a meditation treatment that can have proven effects, on depression, on mental health, it requires a lot of effort. So on the one hand, basically you're choosing with an instant solution that solves your problem, that's a drug, and digital solutions that are basically in some cases saying you will have to, put a lot of effort, but in the long run, this is going to work for you. Not everybody has the grit or the motivation to go through that long period to actually see some results. So from that perspective, what I'm very excited about is VR in mental health. It's not a new thing. It's actually been, in development for the last 20 years. There's a lot of data, a lot of research that's already proven the impact of VR on mental health. So that would be my pick for the most exciting one, and I still need to get my VR headset to feel even better.
A call out to any of the organizations out there. Tjaša could be your test, and then she could write you a beautiful piece and a podcast on it too. So there, I'm selling for you.
Thank you. I mean, I can do a review. It will be, how can I say, independent in a sense that I would say what I think, but would totally be up for a test.
Absolutely. Yeah. The usage of virtual reality and mental health. I've seen examples of some of the presentations designed to calm you or feel less stressed, declutter your mind. Lots of effort to use technology to get responses back to clinicians and our psychiatrists and our physicians and obviously pharmacists with outcomes and questioning and involving responses from people using the tech. I want to meet up with you at some conference. I know it might not be soon since you're going to be in the European conferences coming up. I'm going to be headed to HLTH, I think in the fall, in October. So are you going to be at Health US in October?
We'll see. I will be in Boston in October. So that is definitely something I will do for a digital health and AI conference. So keep that in mind.
Well, if you're listening, please, you will not be disappointed. Facesofdigitalhealth.com. Once again, that's facesofdigitalhealth.com. Wonderful podcast. It's just well thought out, high quality. Your guests are just wonderful. Latest episode was how do pharma and digital health coverage, how do pharma and digital health converge in 2024? And I actually listened to that, I believe, was it last week? I can't remember when I listened to it, but I listened to yours. It's on my list of podcasts for sure, and really enjoy your content a lot.
Thank you.
All right, so you pick the topic next. I'm going to come to Faces of Digital Health. We're going to bring some pharmacists with us because I'd really like to dig into some specific conditions that also are connected to technology and connected to digital health. So you'll have listeners, you'll have to stand by. And if you're a pharmacist that loves technology and loves digital health, please reach out to us at publisher@pharmacypodcast.com. That's once again my email, publisher@pharmacypodcast.com. Tjaša, this has been wonderful. Finally, we get you on the Pharmacy Podcast and This Week in Pharmacy. So we much appreciate you.
I appreciate the time and listening, Todd. And well, let's do this again. And I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.